Electrical pros, the Home Depot can help you put safety first with a 4-pack of Kidde FireX hardwire smoke detectors for just $39.97. Order these interconnected smoke alarms online and you put safety first. And that's followed by $10 savings on each pack, free delivery, and peace of mind knowing you got the right brand for fire safety. See? Put safety first and everything else follows when you order a 4-pack of Kidde smoke detectors for just $39.97. Only at the Home Depot. How doers get more done. U.S. only.
The Peel Art Gallery, Museum and Archives, also known as PAMA, is pleased to partner with Caribbean Art Fair, Black Artist Network and Dialogue, and guest curators Karen Carter and Craig Manuel to present When Night Stirred at Sea, Contemporary Caribbean Art. This exhibit aims to connect Caribbean artists to the broader art world and includes local and international talent, including Brampton's own Janice Reed. The exhibit begins on October 29th virtually and eventually on site once PAMA reopens to the public. For more information, please visit pama.peelregion.ca.
New Theory Radio is presented by PAMA, the Peel Art Gallery, Museum, and Archives.
You are listening to New Theory Radio. Theory Radio.
Hello and welcome to another edition of New Theory Radio, here live on News Talk, Saga 960 AM. My name is Nav Nanwa and I am your host, and this is the show where we theorize on arts and pop culture. We're kicking things off actually with 3 artists that are going to be participating in PAMA's next Artist Talk on Thursday, January 28th. It's a part of When Night Stirred at Sea, Contemporary Caribbean Art, which is the exhibit that's happening right now at PAMA virtually. This event takes place on Thursday, January 28th from 6 to 8 p.m. and it is actually moderated by one of the co-curators, Karen Carter, as these artists will take time to explain their individual practices and influences, and will discuss the ways in which their imagery is influenced by and speaks to their connection to the Caribbean. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm very honored to be joined by the 3 of the artists that will be participating, and we'll start with one of them right now. He is a Trinidadian-born painter based in the U.S. whose work has been exhibited in solo and group shows internationally. Prolific in both the fine arts and fashion design, his work explores themes of storytelling, activism, history, and freedom. He has exhibited across the United States, the Caribbean, and in South Africa. And When Night Stirred at Sea is actually the first time that he's exhibiting in Canada. So very honored to have Miles Regis joining us here on the show. Thanks, Miles, for making the time for us.
The honor is all mine. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And then joining you, we have an artist who is from St. Andrew, Jamaica, which is where she currently resides and where I'm currently jealous. She has a passion for fiber and understanding of the sensitivity of threads and fabric, which she uses to bring forth unique design and sculptural forms. Her practice focuses on the impact of the other on the eye and the role and existence of women. Her work has been featured in numerous international exhibitions in Kingston, Jamaica, Manila, Philippines, Berlin, Germany, Bogota, Colombia, and the United States, and now as well as the Peel region for When Night Stirred at Sea. Very honored to have Katrina Coombs here. Katrina, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
And then we have finally a Canadian artist from Jamaica. Her unique name is indicative of both her insight into self and interpretive reflection of her environment, which is pervasive in her work. Her work often incorporates a rich and striking use of color and features the human figure and natural motifs colliding with geometric shapes and patterns. She has been recognized internationally for her artwork and creative social projects. It is Krystal Ball. Krystal, thanks so much for making the time for us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So we'll just get right into it because, again, just doing my research for this interview, all three of your work are truly, truly amazing, and you can just you can just see the level of intricacy that goes into each of your pieces. But I'm curious, how did you guys get your start? And maybe Miles, we'll begin with you. When did you first pick up, I guess, that painting brush and decided to go down this path?
You know what? As a child back in Trinidad, I was so creative. I was on a stage singing, and in my spare time at home, it was always coloring books or playing with paints and experimenting with texture. I think in the US, I moved to LA for college. So I went to USC and started again, went through teenage years, still dabbling in painting, but not as much. But as a young adult and right during college, I started painting again. And I felt like, you know what, this is something that offered a sense of balance. It helped me escape. Yes, yet it was so. It made me feel rooted. Like it reminded me of Trinidad and being creative in Trinidad. And it was such a culture shock moving to Los Angeles. You know, that uproot can be a bit traumatic, you know, looking back on it. And I think painting was something that sort of helped me feel grounded and made me feel like I was back at home, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So, my first full-time job, I worked for Orion Pictures, and the hobby then became a little bit more serious. I then had enough money to invest in paints, and I was buying canvas pieces and started painting, and my coworkers would come visit, and they sort of were like, "Oh my God, the paintings in this house, they're all amazing. Who did it?" I'm like, it's me. And, you know, that's where it really all started. People started buying from me and then commissioning me. And I think the very first like large professional gig I had was I had some paintings featured in a music video for Erykah Badu.
Oh, really? Which one?
And Next Lifetime.
Oh, one of my favorite songs.
I love that song too.
Yeah.
The very second video. So that was sort of my big professional break. And
Wow.
from there, celebrities started collecting, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Katrina, tell me about the upbringing in St. Andrew, Jamaica, and how you got in touch with your artistic side.
I mean, for me, there's a backstory from when I was not even born, more or less. Whereas I pretty much had the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck, and I was delayed for quite a number of days before coming out. And I've always felt like that perhaps might be rooted with my beginning of my exploration with fibers. But then as I went along, I think I got introduced to macrame and the tying of knots when I was in high school. And that kind of just ignited something within me where I just dived into the material and just wanted to find multiple ways of just manipulating and playing around with yarns and threads. And from there, I think I just decided that I wanted to go into a career of art, and applied for the art school down here at the Manley College of the Visual and Performing Arts, and decided to do weaving. When I dived into that, it was kind of a mixed bag, because it's mainly, when you think of fiber, a lot of persons think of it in the terms of not necessarily fine arts, but more in the applied of creating and designing for garments or interior objects. And I kind of decided from the beginning that no, I'm not making those kind of things. I literally had to put up a protest while I was in school against the idea of creating fabric just for fashion, because everybody came to the department looking on mainly fashion, and that made a little struggle for me when I was in college, just trying to, okay, show the lecturers at that time where it was that I was going, because they were only really focusing in the applied arts. And for that, I really had to pull on other departments, like painting and sculpture, and get advisors over there to kind of look on my work. And I think their feedback really kind of helped me to nurture in the direction that I wanted to go with my practice as a fine artist, as a sculptor, as an installation artist. But in terms of really breaking out and really finding an audience and being accepted even in the art industry was when I got accepted into the Young Talent at the National Gallery of Jamaica. And that project allowed you to put forward a large project, a large collection of work. And that really kind of pushed me to a different level when I was working. So I think that would have been what really started to get me out there more. But I mean, fiber, I've always just really loved it. I've always had a passion for it and playing with it. So yeah.
Amazing. No, that's great. That's a wonderful story. And Krystal, you obviously are our local artist here representing Toronto on the panel. But what was your introduction to art like?
My introduction to art, I started drawing at a very young age. I was really sick. I had really bad asthma and was constantly in the hospital, and I needed something to do, or I'd probably drive my mother insane. So she just kept giving me paper and pencils, and that's how it started. And then eventually I was just doing it as a hobby. At age 10, I won an international art competition that was put on by the World Health Organization. And I feel like after that, my parents kind of took me seriously and realized that this is something that I could probably do. So I've been doing art my entire life. From that competition, went to college in the US as well. And I'm just like, I need to go back home. Studied at home, really wanted to get back into the groove of things and learn about my own roots, because I feel like I left Jamaica at such a young age, because I moved out at 17. I really wanted to go back and connect. When I represented Jamaica on an international level at the World Youth Festival in the Department of Art and Culture. I actually met Putin and had a meeting with him. That's another story.
That sounds like a different episode.
Yeah, it was wild. It was really wild. It caught me off guard. And then after coming back from that, I traveled the Caribbean just to learn about art and learn about the history so I could properly represent it in my work. So it's just this constant fuel, passion being fueled, that keeps me going in the field. So once that start happened way back when, talent was just the start of it. But yeah, it has continued this far.
Yeah, the one thing I like about, or what I see with all three of your starts was really just that recognition piece. You were doing your thing, and all of a sudden, somebody or an institution was able to recognize, wow, you're really good, and from there it just kind of blossomed. Which again, having that affirmation available to you is so crucial, and I think it's great that it that type of reassurance allowed all three of you to kind of go down your separate paths and be able to produce the art that all three of you produce. I want to go into some of the thought processes that go into a lot of your pieces, and Miles, we'll begin with you. You're known for your mixed media paintings and incorporating different materials in your pieces. I'm curious, how do you go about choosing the elements when you're putting a piece together, and what does that thought process look like?
It's really interesting. I've always sort of gravitated towards texture. I think it comes from growing up in Trinidad, and art to me was carnival, carnival costumes. And I always remember after carnival time, there would be discarded costumes. And I would sort of see them on the side of the road and go up to them and sort of examine the texture of it. And I think that is where I think my love of throwing random stuff into that flat canvas surface comes from my love of costuming and the impact that costumes had on me during carnival time. So for me now, it's like, my kids, I have teenagers, boy and a girl, and I'll be driving and I'll see something on the side of the road and like, wow, I love that. They're like, Dad, you are so random. Most kids don't have to jump out of their dad's trucks to pick stuff up for them. But that's just been my thing. It's just like always, I call it, it's would be called upcycling. So I just have boxes of random stuff, and I go to fabric stores and I get, half a yard of different sequin fabric, and I just have a box that I can turn to at any point and just pull, and it's really random, and the spirit would sort of guide me to a certain piece that may be the exact shape of an area that I'm trying to fill. It's really weird how it works. No rhyme or reason, but I just kind of know that I get the right energy when it's placed correctly on the piece. So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, but
no, you certainly did, because when you look at one of your pieces, the colors are typically what stands out, especially to me. Like, it's just, it's beautiful how you've been able to take these colors and be able to put them on a canvas and do it in a way that's very, I don't know, it just captures people's attention right away. And again, you when I was staring at some of your pieces online, I just was curious. I was like, I wonder what he used there, or I wonder what what inspired him to add that piece over there. Like, you kind of allow people to really ask a lot of questions, but in a good way, when they look at one of your pieces.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Katrina, you tell me about the weaving process. Looking at your pieces online, I was just wondering. I was like, this is beautiful. How long did it take you to put it together? Because it's so intricately done, and it truly is just something that's very tangible in regards to what you put together. What's that process like? How long does it usually take you to put a piece together? Like, what's that range?
It all depends on the piece, actually. I mean, there are multiple different techniques that I explore, so it's not even just the weaving on the loom. I do hand weaving with finger knitting, crocheting. I do floor loom weavings. I do coiling. So it all depends on the technicality of what it is that I want to create, the form that I want you to feel and experience, not necessarily feel with literal the touch, but even just the visual experience of it. And so it can vary from a day to a couple of months, depending on the project and the techniques that I am really exploring. But I mean, in creating the pieces, a lot of the times it is really an exploration of the medium itself and of fiber itself. How far can I push this? Can I build forms out of it? What kind of forms can I build? Can I build a form that creates a shape, but yet it's not necessarily a hard surface shape, so it will collapse, so because that's also another issue with me building these sculptures. It's always a matter of how do I transport this. A lot of times, a lot of works, they're actually collapsible, but once they're built out and mounted, they hold a shape and a form. So in creating, it's an exploration of the medium, but it also then goes into the spiritual connection that I have with the material and with fiber, and how it is this maternal object and domestic medium, really, and how that relates to the woman, how that relates to that identity. But I think really diving into it, and it all kind of I guess you can say it started with attempting to identify a sense of security, because even with fabrics, it's the first thing you're wrapped in. It's a sense of safety. You're not going to walk around without any clothes. It's what comforts you at night. And it's just how that notion of security and this medium can become this element that it pulls you in and it pushes you out at the same time. So it makes you feel comfortable when you're viewing it. But then now when you go deeper into the concept of it, there's a little bit of uncomfort there, but yet it's a push and pull that's constantly happening. So in terms of building that, so it's all an expression of material, spirituality, the colors are very significant for me. Red, whites, and golds are the main colors that come out within my fibers, and just exploring that. I sketch a lot too. A lot of times I find myself, I get ideas in my head and I just doodle it down and I'm just sketching all over the place. Nothing ever comes out how the sketch looks though, which is a beautiful part of the process for me. I enjoy doing that, because then once having something on a two-dimensional plane, and then when you actually start manipulating and start attempting to do it, and then the material carries you all over the place into a different thing. We have all of these different happy accidents happening, because I think fiber, there's just so much potential within it that I think a lot of us don't really realize. I can paint, I can sculpt, I can do almost anything with it.
Yeah, it's very versatile, right? And you can see that even with your pieces, and yeah, like I'd love to see some of your pre-sketches and just how they've ended up evolving once you physically. Oh, is that one right behind you?
Not very clear though.
Because again, I think that's I guess the interesting part of the process is just how an initial idea just evolves as you physically start putting it together. Krystal, your pieces, like I mentioned in your bio, feature the human figure and natural motifs. You love to include geometric shapes and patterns. What is it about these elements that really inspire the work that you do?
So these are elements that I see every day. So they really stand out to me, and usually it's something like I will go out and something significant happens, something inspiring happens, and then it's up to me to translate that into whatever piece I want to, and twist it to convey the message that I'd like to convey. I feel like I'm a spirit having a human experience, and therefore I feel like that's something that I need to document. This is something that I just want to live in the moment, be grateful for what is happening, and nobody can experience life the same way that I'm experiencing life. So I feel like that is a very unique standpoint, and I just want to use whatever it is that I'm experiencing, whatever I come across. A lot of the people in my paintings are people that I know, people that have made an impact on my life, or somebody that they've told me a story. The story is just like, it just hooked me, or it sparked something. So I feel like this is just my artwork, in a sense, is a collection of experiences over time, and it's absolutely wonderful to be able to sit down, look at them, and be able to tell exactly what I was thinking, who was around me, and what inspired the piece. So that's where I draw all my inspiration from.
Yeah, and it's definitely like when I was looking at your pieces, just the human connection aspect to a lot of the people that end up becoming a part of your pieces is something that stands out to me, because it's just, it's a portrait, but it's a portrait with a lot of meaning and a lot going on that really gravitates towards you to just the subject that you decide to profile. How does, in Krystal, we're going to stick with you for just one more question. Like, how does being a global citizen play such a role in the work that you produce?
It plays a major role, actually. As I said, I travel a whole lot and I value experiences. So traveling experiences goes hand in hand, and nothing will like expose you, broaden your horizon quite like traveling and exploring, meeting different people. As I said before, I spent some time just traveling across the Caribbean, which I realize is not something a lot of people in the Caribbean do. There were a lot of surprises, lots of things that I didn't expect, a lot of intense experiences, but most of all, I met some amazing people. And every single time I feel inspired, so much so that like even coming to Canada, meeting so many, that Canada has such a melting pot of cultures and people. And I found that very interesting. So being able to move around, being able to have those experiences and put them into my work is great, especially because it helps me to connect with so many other people, where I will include, because there are collections of places I've been or things I've experienced, I will include items from my travel in my paintings and have people from that region or that country identify it and go, oh, here's this thing, I know this, my people wear it, or it's something that is common in my country. So being a global citizen has definitely given me so much material to work with and provided me with like endless inspiration in terms of like what I can produce and what work I can bring forward.
Mm-hmm. Katrina, your work and you as a person, you represent the unspoken voice that exists for women when it comes to their existence and identity. Why is that important to you?
I think there's a lot that happens that are just not discussed amongst us. I mean, when it comes to the physical capacity of the woman's body, when it comes to the womb, its functionality, when it comes to even just seeing your menstrual cycle, there is this hush-hush nature and culture, which is universal, as well as there's a lot of negative stigma in some circumstances that is against the woman. When she sees her cycle, she's put aside. You're seen as unclean, but this is the process that really gives life. It is a process that all women experience, whether if you want to be a woman or not. It's a bodily function, and we have this tendency to other the womb, where it's no longer us. It is this other object. When we're seeing our cycle, it's something else that has happened onto us. And even with our own characters, our mood swings and our mood shifts, you become a different person. And I just feel that there, with all of that negative stigma that is around it, for me, I would love for there to be a sense of acceptance more than anything. Some people say I protest silently, gently, by just putting what is, but it's really a matter of speaking the truth to what we are, how we exist, accepting it and finding that comfort zone, and also in celebrating the woman, celebrating her identity as she is and how she carries herself and exists amongst others. So it's not even so much just the othering of the body, but how we become othered and othered some more once we start talking about the womb, once we start talking about childbearing, once we start talking about the loss of a child, where that becomes something that if a woman goes through it and people are aware of this, there's this sense of uncomfort, to have a conversation about it. So for me, I think it is vitally important for us to find that mid-ground where we can feel free to speak to these issues. And that's kind of a lot of what my work really at this current point in time focuses on, is different experiences. And a lot of it's stemmed out of my own experience as a woman, my own experience of losing a child and what that did to me mentally, physically, emotionally. And then now finding how I reacted with people and how best to move forward, and initially my work was cathartic. It was just me addressing those issues, or at least finding a way to speak without speaking. And then now it has become more open to no longer just being my own individual independent voice, and now identifying the voices of others and now applying that within the practice. That's kind of why it's so important for me to really just exist as is, with no apologies whatsoever. We are, and that is what it is.
Yeah, and good for you for allowing your art to speak to that, because I think the experience that you mentioned is an experience that needs to be profiled, because it is such an important part of everyone's life, right? In regards to the role that women play in allowing life to happen. So, kudos to you for sharing that, as well as kind of putting your own experience towards that as well. And Miles, a lot of your pieces deal with social change, and it's very evident when you look at even your work in recent years. Why is that important to you?
It's always been really important for me to express my absolute truth. It's sort of this unapologetic, here is my experience, here's what I am going through as a Black man from Trinidad who has adopted a new culture and is adjusting as a husband, as a father, sort of navigating with a family this it's been 32 years since I've been in the US, so it's not so new anymore, but it's something that is very different from the Trinidad reality. So it has taken a lot of adjustment, and having children makes it even more of a complicated journey. You sort of raise your children thinking, well, I could kind of do it the way I was raised. But when you're growing up, or you have them growing up in another culture, you have to find new ways of coping, of adjusting. And I just speak to matters that really concern me. I want this world to be a better place for my children, for the next generation. And I sort of feel like I'm responsible for expressing my truth with regard to what's wrong and what needs to be changed. So my stories are deeply personal a lot of the times. And I feel like when I express from the heart and when it's deeply personal, it really resonates with a wider audience. It's incredible. Like, I've painted some stories that come from really dark times within my family, loss of family members, and situations with law enforcement, and just I could go on and on about the personal experiences. But I've found that the more personal I am when I am expressing and when I'm creating, people may not know exactly what it is I am saying, but there's something about that piece. It could be a super abstract piece. If I put all of my pain into that piece, some people may get joy out of it, but the deeper and the more real I am with my expression, the more it resonates and connects with an audience. So having understood that from really early in my career, I've just really stayed true to that. It's like every time I paint, I'm sort of reflecting on what's happening. So like you said, over the past couple of years, it's been a lot of social, a lot of police brutality, and I have a 17-year-old son who wears dreadlocks and is 6'4", and he's out on the streets, and my fear is when he leaves the house that a cop is gonna somehow, he has some altercation with a cop. So I paint about that. A lot of the stuff that I've done sort of speaks to what is really important to parents with young Black male children out on the streets today. So to answer your question, it really is my story, and I found that my story sort of connects on a global, universal level.
Yeah, especially with the year that we just had, right? And
Yes.
in the events of the summer.
Absolutely.
I think now more so than ever, work like what you've been able to produce over the last few years has if anything, it's probably captured more people, but it's also probably driven new meaning to a lot of different things too, right? Or meaning that was probably
really
already
has.
there, but now people are simply just realizing
Finally
it.
waking up to exactly. During the uprising and the protests in June and July, I painted a lot of new pieces, but I was able to post on social media a lot of pieces that I've done, some of them as far back as 10 years ago. And it's amazing how relevant they were. So people kept going, "Oh my God, is this new? It's beautiful." I'm like, no, did that. It's been my reality for the past.
Yep. Still going on.
Yep, that's a piece from 2010, but yep. Yeah, it's quite relevant. And that's the interesting thing about art. Sometimes I would do something and I'm like, I don't think it's the time for it to be showcased is now. And then something will happen 4 months later and it's like, oh my God, this is perfect. And I posted on social media and it's like, oh my goodness, this is exactly how I feel. And people start reposting, and it's, again, as long as I'm sort of like reflecting on my truth and I'm being absolutely authentic with that expression, I know there's a time when it resonates.
Exactly. I just have one last question for all three of you. Obviously, all three of you are part of the artist talk that'll be taking place on January 28th as a part of When Night Stirred at Sea, Caribbean contemporary art. It's quite the art exhibit, right? It's all solely Caribbean artists, and being someone who's from Peel, I've never seen anything like this before, and I am grateful for PAMA for putting this together along with Craig Manuel and Karen Carter. I just wanted to talk to all three of you regarding what an exhibit like this really means to you, because again, we've all had a pretty rough 2020, for the most part, and there's been a lot of 2020 was a year where a lot of people realized a lot of different things, and Miles, I know you and I, kind of alluded to sort of the racial uprising that took place, last year as well. It now feels more than the right time, if not, an exhibit like this should have existed a long time ago, but now feels like more than the right time for these artists to have a space that's so welcoming. So, Krystal, we'll begin with you. Like, what's your what does an exhibit like When Night Stirred at Sea mean to you?
So this is the first time I'm showing with people from the Caribbean outside of the Caribbean. So it means a lot to me, especially being there before. So this is a continuation of the Caribbean Art Fair that was held in Jamaica in January of last year. And fortunately, I was there behind the scenes and got to see how everything came together. So it means a whole lot to me, and it has a special place in my heart to see the show currently at PAMA and being able to participate, especially because I spent last year was a rough year. It was a lot to experience. There was a lot of self-development that happened during that time, and a lot of things that had to be challenged, especially as somebody who is from the Caribbean, now living in North America, where I now live in Canada. I lived in the US, and seeing everything that's happening, and to people that look like me across the board, because you had they had issues in Africa, within the African countries, like the NSARS riots. You had things happening in the Caribbean, where Caribbean is a hotspot for like colorism, classism. That's their ism. And residing in Canada, so close to the US, having friends in the US, and kind of like understanding on a deep level what Miles was talking about regarding you have people who you're sincerely worried about, and having to process all of that. And I remember like feeling a bit lost, and I feel like having the opportunity to show at PAMA, having the outlet where I got to do my brother's keeper, the mural that's currently up, really gave me a time to reconcile with those issues that I was having. So it means a lot to me on a personal level, as well as an artistic career level.
Katrina, what about you?
For me, well, being at PAMA, it's very significant as a textile and fiber artist coming out of Jamaica, especially now with the art scene, because fiber, it really hasn't been something that was accepted for probably for quite a number of years. It has been kind of evolving over the past 5 years now, and almost being the lead person doing, or probably one of the only persons doing fiber in Jamaica. It really speaks volumes, because I have been really working hard to get my work noticed, get the medium noticed and accepted locally. And one of those things were also for me to reach out of Jamaica, because I think within the Caribbean, as you said, not a lot of Caribbeans travel around the Caribbean or even outside of the Caribbean. We have a tendency to kind of get stuck within this box that this is it, and being able to step out and then to see that a different world allows our work to speak volumes internationally as well as locally, and especially with what happened with Corona last year, and it's still really breathing life right across the world. I think the Caribbean has had a very drastic shift in terms of Caribbean art being shown internationally, because just last year alone, there were 3 Caribbean-based exhibitions happening, one in Switzerland, one in the United States. There's a travel exhibition running right now, and then now here with PAMA, so there's a lot that is happening with the Caribbean art. There's a lot of conversations around the arts coming out of the Caribbean, and it's not even just solely Caribbean art, because a lot of times it's persons who have migrated, but they're actually taking works from artists who are living in the Caribbean and showing that outside. So no, it's no longer this thing where you have to be outside of the Caribbean for your work to be shown. Outside's coming to us. We can now be producing our works and sending our works out. And but even just with fiber and the arts, being here in Jamaica, initially, before I started traveling, years ago, I felt alone producing the techniques and the medium and working with the medium, but also the context. But upon traveling now and noticing, there are so many different artists, fiber artists out there, and being a part of this exhibition at PAMA, it's my first exhibition in Canada. It's highly significant being accepted, it gives a sense of affirmation to the practice that I am doing and to the continuance of it, with all the struggles that we faced here, so it's very significant to me professionally, personally, and it just brings everything to a different level. And I love what I'm seeing happening. I really love to see a lot more exhibitions, Caribbean-based exhibitions, happening outside, and just that conversation to just keep going and keep developing and just transforming.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's great to see, because I think for a lot of people, and I hope this changes with more exhibits like One Night Stirred at Sea, is there's certain areas of the world where people just don't realize, hey, there's amazing artists here. Like, look past the paradise and the amazing food. Like, if you actually go deep, like, I think that's been something that I've gotten to appreciate with this exhibit, is just realizing, like, no, there's amazing art coming out from these areas that everyone loves to visit, right? And I think to me, it just makes me want to immerse myself in that the next time I decide to visit the Caribbean. Miles, you mentioned you've been in the US for over 30 years. Just want to get your perspective of what an exhibit like One Night Stirred at Sea means to you. Have you ever been a part of anything like this before, like throughout your career?
I have not.
Really?
Not.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's extremely special for me to be a part of something where, Caribbean Collective is showcasing talent, where Caribbean art is in the forefront. I sort of grew up in a family of artists. My uncle, Alexander King, my mom's brother, was sort of a household name in Trinidad. And there was always a lot of really rich, vibrant art happening. Like I said, Trinidad Carnival alone sort of provided this amazing canvas. So I never really even knew of artists outside of the Caribbean realm. And then, I moved to the US, and I moved to a city where there isn't a strong Caribbean population. So as I've exhibited in group exhibitions, I tend to always be the only Caribbean or Trinidadian. Well, there are a couple Jamaican artists I've shown with in the past, but to be in this sort of really strong Caribbean themed show, and at a very prestigious museum at that. I've been really focused on trying to do more museum shows at this point in my career. So that too is sort of a milestone. And then the work selected, a lot of it was, I think everything was pulled from work that I did during the quarantine, so I call it my coronavirus series. And a lot of the museums over here in the US have been shut down. There've been delays on shows that I committed to. So when I got the call from Karen talking about doing a show, I was like, wow, and COVID doesn't exist in Canada? Like, so, it was amazing. The timing of it was also really amazing. And I'm really proud of the pieces that are there. We have America, which speaks to the uprising and the protests, Quarantine, Love on Lockdown, which is a family sort of, at home in quarantine, and Better Days Ahead, which is sort of my message that, 2020 was a rough one for us all, but I firmly believe that there are better days ahead for us.
Yeah. No, and I'm hoping you're right, but we do know that there are better days ahead, obviously, because on January 28th, there is the artist talk for One Night Stirred at Sea taking place online. So everyone go visit pama.peelregion.ca to go sign up. And yes, it features Miles, Regis, Katrina Coombs, and Krystal Ball, all of which are amazing artists. Thank you, all three of you, for joining us here on New Theory Radio. This has been a very enlightening conversation. Personally, for me, someone who's a fan of art, I've always loved getting into the thought process around and artists' work and how they pretty much go through that process to put something together. And again, I really, really appreciate the conversation. We'll just do a quick we'll do a quick rundown in case anybody wants to connect with either one of you on social. So Miles, what's the best way for people to learn about the work that you're doing?
My website is my name, milesregis.com. That's Miles with an I. Mm-hmm. My social handle, Instagram, is @MilesRegis, as well as Facebook is Miles Regis. So pretty easy to find.
Excellent. And Katrina, what about you?
You can find me. My website is Katrina Coombs .wordpress.com. Mm-hmm. I'm also on Instagram. It's Duchess KC Fibres, DuchessKCFibres. Mm-hmm. So you can find me on either one of those there. Yeah.
Excellent. And Krystal, last but not least, where can people follow your work?
So I have a website. It's Krystal Ball Arts. That's KrystalBall art.com. And my Instagram is @Krystal Ball Artist.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't get that confused. But awesome. No, again, thank you all three of you for joining us here on New Theory Radio. We are going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be right back with more NTR here on News Talk Saga 960 AM.
What's happening? Oh, you know who this is.
You are listening to New Theory Radio.
What's happening? Oh, you know who this is.
And we are back here on New Theory Radio, here live on News Talk Saga 960 AM. My name is Nav Nanwa, and I am your host. And this is the show we theorize on arts and culture. And I'm very excited to be joined by Michelle Gurwitz, who is the supervisor of arts and culture at PAMA, the Peel Art Gallery Museum and Archives. Michelle, big event taking place on January 28th when it comes to the When Night Stirred at Sea exhibit. You know, PAMA is hosting an artist talk that's centered around painting and textiles. We just had three of the artists on New Theory Radio in the previous segments. What else can you tell us about this great event?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It was a nice preview that we just had, I think. This artist talk will be moderated by the co-curator, Karen Carter, and it's going to focus on the painters and the textile artists in the show, and there are 5 of them. So the 3 that you just talked to, Katrina Coombs, Miles Regis, Krystal Ball, and then there's Ela Lovelace Kunert, who's a textile artist, and Owen Gordon, who's a painter based in Toronto.
I think it's worth noting that the last time PAMA did an artist talk, it actually was sold out.
It was sold out, which was, really good attendance. I'm hoping we'll have the same turnout. It'll be, I'm sure, an equally engaging conversation. And so, as I mentioned, Karen is moderating. It's also presented in partnership with the Black Artist Networks in Dialogue or Band. Sign up. You don't want to miss your spot because I think we tap out at around 100 people. So when last time we exceeded that. So
I remember seeing that. I was like, wow, like this is awesome. Like, and again, I think a lot of it's attributed to the fact that obviously there's this adjustment that we've all had to make when it comes to virtual events, but at the same time, I'm assuming that guest list you had for the photography talk that you did a few months ago probably had people on there that weren't necessarily from Peel. Am I correct?
Yeah, we did have people from all over the world, which is really cool. But I think too, just the uptake. I mean, it's nice to know that people aren't, there isn't this fatigue. But I think it really speaks to there's an appetite for this kind of programming. I mean, you alluded to it when you were speaking with the artists. Like shows like this are really long overdue, and it does give a kind of insight into what's going on here with artists who diasporic artists but also like art scenes that whether not everybody can travel to them, so we do our best to bring you a little slice, just to kind of open up different windows into what's different scenes.
Yeah, exactly. And what's actually unfortunate is the fact that we're only, One Night Stood at Sea, which has been an exhibit that, again, I urge everybody to go check out. If you haven't checked out, it is happening virtually right now through PAMA's various channels. It comes to an end next month in February, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the exhibit's coming to a full stop, because I'd heard some news that PAMA actually acquired 2 pieces to be a part of its collection. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, we sure did. And you're right. It's a real shame that we have to say goodbye to it, and a double shame that not too many people actually got to come in and see it. But we've had some traffic for sure online. But yeah, it's really exciting for us. We purchased 2 works, one by Miles Regis, Love on Lockdown. He mentioned that, a kind of a family portrait of, what many of us experienced, as the world kind of shut down and in March and went into lockdown, and here we are in another lockdown. But and then a piece that actually wasn't in the show, but is by one of the artists in the show, Owen Gordon, who actually had a show at Nicholas Mativier Gallery, a commercial gallery on King Street in Toronto. And so we were fortunate enough to get a piece from him. It's called The Heist. It is a collage work, an ink and acrylic on paper, and actually deals with the stock market crash of 2008. So I think that kind of both of those pieces very, speak to contemporary or recent events, and can be mobilized and shown in different contexts. I think there's, a lot that we can do. We're super happy to be able to support the artists in that way. I wish that we could have acquired work from all of the artists that are featured in the show. And you never know, though. I mean, there's always tomorrow. It's really cool to be bringing these really strong and compelling pieces into our collection, and I'm sure we'll have chances to feature them or loan them out to other organizations. You never know.
Yeah, and I think it's awesome that PAMA's decided to make these acquisitions, because again, there were a lot of amazing artists a part of One Night Stood at Sea, and I think it's a great way to kind of keep that legacy going. Is that a direction moving forward for PAMA to try to tap into more contemporary art, or art that maybe relates to things that are happening in various communities or historical events? Is that something that PAMA has always done, or is that something new for PAMA moving forward?
It's probably a bit of a new thing, but I certainly think that, we're looking at our collections pretty holistically, but we're also trying to make sure that they are representative of the communities which we serve. And I think we're undergoing a process where we're doing a kind of, it's a little boring maybe sounding, but we're, a bit of taking stock, a bit of an audit of our collection, but really to identify gaps and certainly I think, but I do think that work like Miles was speaking very eloquently about it just earlier, actually all 3 artists were, about, work that has social importance, whether it speaks to current events. And I think people really respond to that. So I think it's important that, it's our duty of care to proactively, collect work that is reflective of our time.
Excellent. So one last time, let the listeners know how they can be a part of the final artist talk for One Night Stood at Sea, which is taking place on Thursday, January 28th. Well, what are the details?
So if you go to our website, pama.peelregion.ca, under events, there's a calendar of events. You can click on January 28th. So the talk is scheduled from 6 to 8 p.m. You do have to register in advance, but it is free. And so there's a link that'll take you to Eventbrite, and you just sign yourself up. And as I said, it should feature all 5 artists who work in textiles and painting, and moderated by co-curator and founder of the Caribbean Art Fair, Karen Carter. And so presented in partnership with that band.
Yeah, and if it sounded like anything, then like what we just did, a few minutes ago, I think everyone's in for a treat. So it's going to be a very, very awesome and intimate conversation. Thanks so much, Michelle, for joining us to share more details.
Sure, anytime.
Awesome. And this actually concludes this week's edition of New Theory Radio. So I wanted to thank PAMA, Miles, Katrina, Krystal, as well as Michelle for joining us on this week's show. If you want to connect with me, it is at Nav Nanwa on Instagram and Twitter. If you want to connect with New Theory Radio, it is at New Theory Radio across all social platforms. Big shout outs to Amit Nanwa, aka my little brother. He is the man behind all of our videos on our social channels. As well, special thanks to Dusty Loops. He is the producer extraordinaire and the producer behind our theme song and some of the instrumentals that you hear throughout NTR. Dusty is responsible for those as well. And this is a wrap. Next week is our special mental health episode, so I hope you all enjoy that. Stay indoors, stay safe, and you will hear all of us next time. Peace.